Good morning, everybody. Good morning, Facebook. Good morning, Instagram. Good morning, YouTube. It is 9:30 on a Thursday, which means it is Cotton Cuts time. Thank you guys so much for joining us. I see people checking in from all over. You guys, it is, I think we skipped spring and it right to summer all of a sudden. It is real hot. It is real humid. I was at a soccer game last night at 8 o'clock. The sun was down. And we were all drenched in sweat because it is thick and humid. And welcome to St. Louis. It'll probably snow next week. Who knows? All right. Thank you all so much for joining us. I see lots of rain from people. We've had more than our fair share of rain here in St. Louis. I think we're all tired of it and we're ready to move on. But of course, we're not ready to go to the humidity. But c'est la vie. Okay, thank you all so much for joining us. We are going to start, as we always do, with questions that are submitted by you guys. Go to cottoncuts.com/live to enter your question. These are here on the desk when I sit down. I don't know what we're going to learn today, but why don't we dive in and see? Someone quilted by Sue is saying hotter than fire here. So yes, I imagine you're probably somewhere in the south or southwest. It's May. It's hot, people. This is the way the world works. Okay. April from Richmond, Virginia said, what's your best tip for sewing long rows of quilt blocks together without ending up with waves or stretching? Okay, so this is a good question because this is something we've kind of touched on it the past couple shows, but how do you sew together long rows of quilt blocks? And so I am going to simplify this and say you've got long rows and you're trying to finish a quilt. So the easiest and best and safest answer is just use lots of pins. If you've got lots of intersections that you want to line up in your finished design, you better put a pin in those. And you've got to make sure you pin them. Every intersection you want to connect should be pinned. It is inevitable. Nobody is perfect. And you might have to ease those pieces together to get them to fit so those corners intersect. And so easing is... it's not something that's really talked about, but it's a quilter's way of cheating where we kind of make sure that one piece feeds a little faster than the other so those two intersecting pieces will meet. Easing is kind of making those two pieces, maybe stretching one just a little, even though you're not supposed to do that, and making one go through a little faster. So easing to help make those intersections come together at the pin that you've put in place. Now, for me, I know when you're sewing rows together, there's one method where you do row, and then add the next row, and add the next row, and add the next row, and add the next row. I prefer to sew 2 rows together, 2 rows together, 2 rows together, and then connect those groups together. It's a little easier to get through the machine. It does require you making sure that you're labeling your rows so that way you know which one is 1 and 2 and 3 and 4, because it would be really rough if you did 1, 2, 4, 3, 5, and 6. You're going to be ripping those long rows apart, and that's a lot of thread. And I know many of us, play bobbin chicken, and you might have to thread another bobbin. And that's just a little like kick in the shins when you're so close to finishing your project. So make sure you label your rows whenever you're sewing your long rows together. Make sure you use pins. If you prefer to do 1 to 2 to 3 to 4, make sure that you're stitching in opposite directions each way. Make sure that you're not all going left to right for every row or right to left from every row. It's one of those subtle little things that when you're quilting, whenever you're quilting, they always say go down, then up, down, then up. And I've held it to be true whenever I'm sewing long strips together for a top as I go left to right, then right to left. I'm assuming that's the direction. Left to right, right to left. And so make sure that you're alternating directions in which you sew those long strips together. And for me, I know this is I don't know if this is really a hot take or not, but whenever I'm sewing long rows together, I don't press until I'm done, right? Unless they're intersecting with something else that I'm adding on to, I will sew my sections of 2, my sections of 2, my sections of 2, then sew them together, and then I'll press all the rows on the same time. Usually it's so big at that point, I kind of only want to be at my ironing board once as I'm pressing all those seams. So I don't iron those as I go. I iron when I am done. Okay. And of course, when you iron, you're ironing with a dry iron so that way nothing stretches and wrinkles. And if you use steam and you want to put that's okay. You do you if steam works for you. But for me, I usually use a dry iron, and that helps me not have any waves or any stretching as I am working through the quilt. Okay, thanks for your question, April. I appreciate that. That was awesome. And I've seen a lot of people talking about how long rows are on their task today, and we have some dedicated pinners. So I am and I didn't used to be a pinner. I used to just be like, I'll sit down and just feed whatever fabric comes to me through the machine and, cross my fingers and hope it all comes out well. But then I started making more complex quilts, and I realized the benefits of the pins. And I am a pin through the side, and then I just take them out, put them right in my pin cushion as I go, never sew over a pin, all that stuff. But yeah, I would say pins are definitely something that I have learned to love of recent years. All right, thanks for the question, April. Next up, we have Michelle from Charleston, South Carolina. What's a simple way to personalize a quilt for a special occasion, like a wedding or a graduation? Okay, we get this question pretty frequently. They're like, how do I personalize? So we've talked about quilt tags. I'm going to leave that one off to the side because we talked a lot about quilt tags last week in the open Q&A. So for me, if I am making a quilt for a wedding or a graduation, I'm going to go back to the beginning. And so I'm going to make sure that the colors that I pick for the quilt are something that are sentimental to the person that's receiving it. And in that case, they may love sage. I made a quilt for a wedding and you guys know, I don't like green. I don't do green. And I had to suck it up because it's not about me. It's about them. And so I made a quilt that was all different shades of sage and green and very soft. And it was about them. And so when you're thinking about a way to make that sentimental gift and to give it a little bit extra, making sure that you're giving them something they will love. And even, I'm pretty sneaky. I will subliminally ask questions ahead of time just to make sure I'm on theme for them. Also, if you're looking at a wedding or a graduation, coming up with something, using things that are personal to the people that are receiving it. And so I know for a wedding, a lot of times people use, send out pieces of fabric to friends and to the bridal party and have them leave sentimental messages on it and then stitch that into the quilt. For a graduation, t-shirt quilts are super popular. Taking themes that the person who's graduating, if they're graduating with a certain degree in a certain thing, making sure you're incorporating that into the quilt. And I think that when you're thinking of ways that you really want to make that quilt extra sentimental, going over the top to integrate things that are personalized into it. And I'm not saying the quilt has to be entirely blocks that are just, notes from friends and whatnot. Those can be integrated into a block. They can be sprinkled throughout. They don't have to be the focal, but just their presence is what makes the gift that much more important and that much more meaningful when it is given. I would say if you are going that above and you are putting in extra things into the quilt top design, please, please, please make sure to tell people to give you a seam allowance, because I've had that happen before where, I've given fabric out and people have written these like super passionate, heartfelt notes and they didn't give anywhere near a 1/4 inch on the seam. And I had to ask them to do again, which is fine. But for some of these events, like the wedding's going to happen on the wedding day and you might not have enough time to get that again. So make sure you're telling everyone about your seam allowance to make sure you don't have to go back and do all that again. Let's see here. Yes. So I'm just popping in on the comments and the notes. And so I would say then, of course, there's, making sure that you're, putting in the quilt label and putting in the sentimental reason for the gift. All those things give it just a little extra. And today's show, we're talking about fussy cutting, which is a fantastic way to kind of give that project that little extra, that little I went above and beyond. And so we will talk about lots of different methods and tips and tricks for fussy cutting coming up that you guys will be able to use as well to give it just a little extra for weddings, graduations, births of baby. Those are things that you want to give just a little bit of more of a lasting memento. And so it is worth that little extra bit of effort. All right. Thanks, Michelle, for your question. I appreciate it as always. If you have a question for us for next week, go to cottoncuts.com/live. Submit your question. Paula puts these here. They're always a surprise to me, but we will see what we can all learn together. I see lots of folks have given StreamYard their permission, so that way I can kind of see your names and interact with you and answer your questions as we go along. Yeah, Pat Vizino is jumping to our theme here. She's kind of jumping ahead on my notes. We'll get there in a second, Pat. Okay. And don't forget to stay to the end. We're going to give away a $25 gift card to the Cotton Cut Shop just for hanging out with me today. So stay to the end. We'll have a question. We'll pick one lucky winner. All right. So what's happening in the shop this week? Pat jumped the gun. So our Mystery 5-0 theme was officially announced this week. And so it is going to be Hawaiian Paradise. And so I know whenever we announce a theme, people start thinking that all the fabrics are going to be in that theme. They're all going to be Hawaiian Paradise. And so as we've said, when we talk about the puzzle mystery quilts, it is really just an all-encompassing kind of theme over the titles of the quilts with a little bit of elements in the design, but not every quilt is going to be Hawaiian themed, guys. So if you're thinking we're going to do a whole bunch of like tropical and underwater and undersea, that's not the way it works. The theme is just a way for us to connect all the quilts together. And so Hawaiian Paradise is the theme. So be expecting a lot more Hawaiian shirts. When Dominic is here this summer, that kid has a ridiculous number of Hawaiian shirts. Sometimes he wears 2 and 3 at the same time. So you're going to be seeing a lot of Hawaiian themed things from us as the show goes on, as we start talking more about the Mystery 5.0. We did finalize our 5 colorways for this. This is exciting. Like, we're super excited about this, you guys. We spent a ton of time talking to the folks at H&H, and definitely stay tuned for sneaks of those collections coming up. We're going to start doing a lot more about Mystery 5.0 in June, but I did want to tell you guys that the mystery theme was revealed. All right. Under the Sea, that's our big thing this month. So big thing this month is that we're starting to name our colorways. So Paula had a field day coming up with all these under the sea themes, trying to come up with different colorway names. So you guys get to pick the names. Head over to our Facebook group and pick the names that you guys want for all these colorways. As they are selected and picked, we will update the website so you guys can check out all your colorways there. And we are doing a special show, the next week's show. And next Thursday is all about Under the Sea. So we're going to cover all the colorways. We're going to show you the fabrics. We're going to talk about which fabric is more important in the color wheel. We're going to cover a bunch of stuff so that way you guys are as informed as possible when you sign up. And that way you guys end up with a quilt that you're going to love. All right, Stitchits are also dropping today at 11 o'clock. We've taken a couple months off of Stitchits so our team can get caught up, but we are ready to bring that back. And so we have 3 amazing collections. They will be on the website in an hour and 15 minutes. We are doing less of them, guys, so they will sell out. Oh my gosh, I am being asked if I'm going to show up as a mermaid. Well, so seeing as how you guys can't usually see what's under the table, I don't know if there will be a mermaid present. I was asked about a coconut bra, and I did kind of veto that idea. I will wear a coconut bra if you guys show up on the camera with me in a coconut bra. So that challenge is down. So whoever raises their hand, you can get in on that action. All right. Modern Maker is actually shipping today, guys. Those fabrics are lovely. They're amazing. I showed you guys them last week. Those are moving out the door today. And our classic boxes ship next week. And so I have a couple of the classic fabrics here to show everyone. And so classic is our preference subscription. So you tell us what you like, what you don't like. We put together a different box every month with the different collections in them. This one is definitely more of a muted palette. However, if you like bright fabrics, we have like this one. As soon as I saw it across the shop floor, I was like, this is fantastic. This is amazing. This is a beautiful fabric. A seaweed tiara. Joyce, that is a fantastic suggestion. I'm going to pass that one over to Paula to source a seaweed tiara. That is a fantastic idea. But you tell us what you like, what you don't like, and we ship you fabrics based upon what you tell us. This fabric is going to come back as we talk about fussy cutting. We have these cute little Sasquatches, gang. If you like juvenile fabric, we've got the Sasquatches, we've got the feet. Like, this is the beauty of the classic, right? If you like this stuff, we can drop these little surprises in your box. If you don't, then that's fine. You won't never see it again. That's the way the classic box works. Siren crown would be fun to wear, just saying. So Savannah, I'm reading a fantasy book, and the sirens are in it, and they all have like scales for clothing, and I don't know how far we're going to go on the sirens, but okay. Just keep giving these ideas, and Paula will sort through all of them and figure out what sort of costume we're going to do. All right. All right. Tim Holtz Green, that guy is out the door, gang, and I am seeing them come into our Tim Holtz Fabric Facebook group. Super excited. We have the next 2 months colorways. It's teal and blue, so make sure to sign up if you have not already. We're about to close signups on those, and we still have Stitchits and pillow kits. I will show you guys the green pillow kit next week, and that'll get added to our big block quilt that we are working on behind the scenes. Earth Day Challenge. You guys, I saw a finished Earth Day Challenge project a couple days ago in the Facebook group, and my heart is so darn happy because, like, you guys are embracing this. You are helping us keep all these lovely fabrics out of the landfills, out of the waste stream, and I cannot even begin to share how much I appreciate your guys helping us with that. You know, we do a lot of die cutting. We do a lot of things that generate a lot of scrap. And it hurts us to think about throwing any of that away. So I love these challenges, and I love the inspiration you're giving everybody with these projects you're creating. So a quick reminder, your entry needs to be in by June 3rd. That is 3 weeks, guys. So if you've gotten those fabrics, you've gotten them ironed and pressed, it's time to start putting them together. There's also, I think, tips and tricks on the website for taking good photos, right? So you can have the most amazing project, but if it's in a dark room, please, please, please take it outside, not direct sun, indirect sun. And that is the absolute best way to take that photo is indirect sun outside. So if you're in a rainy place, check your weather forecast and see if you can plan to have it outside on a sunny day. That is the best way to take your photo. And of course, if you've got helpers to help you hold up your quilts, that is also another fantastic way to do as well. All right, Joyce is saying seashell jewelry. Again, Paula, It's on Paula's list. Going that way. All right. And then we will be doing online voting for that Earth Day challenge. I love this part that you guys get to pick the winners. I know that sometimes when you do challenges like this, it feels like the person who has the most likes and followers, blah, 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 always wins. We've never subscribed to that. It has always been viewer's choice. So you can email your friends, your family, your coworkers, your children, your neighbors, anyone, and have them vote, and you will jump to the top of the pile and win the prizes. And I'm pretty sure we've announced the prizes so far, but there's big prizes. They're like $250, $300 each. They're awesome. They're great. We love giving stuff away to support our mission for this. Okay. Last, our Zoom sewing is tonight. The Cotton Cut Society is meeting. And so that happens tonight at 7:00 p.m. Central Time. Carrie from our member care team is actually hosting the event tonight. She is back. She's been gone for a while, unfortunately. But she's back, and so she's going to host the society tonight. And so pop on in, say hi to Carrie, join the lovely group of ladies. And so whatever things Cotton Cuts you're working on, it can be Tim Holtz, it can be Under the Sea, it can be Wild West. You can even go back as far back as you want. If you want to do a So Sweet puzzle mystery quilt, that is you. Just gather, sew, and enjoy each other's company. Okay, a pirate with a fabric parrot. Wow, we are okay. This is gonna be fun. Paula gets to sort all this stuff out. I think we actually have pirate stuff here. We went to a costume store the day after Halloween, and I think we might have grabbed some pirate stuff, but we will stay tuned for that. All right, so today's topic, let's jump into it. Fussy cutting. So when I say those words, I feel like it's going to get one of two reactions. Either this is awesome, I love fussy cutting, it is my life, or I avoid it like the plague, and I never want to do it. And so what I want to do today is give you guys just enough information to want to go and learn more about it. And so I'm going to show you guys some easy fussy cutting all the way up to some advanced fussy cutting, and hopefully show you guys some new ways, tips, and tricks of looking at your fabric. And even if after watching this segment, you never fussy cut anything, I want you to see your fabrics slightly differently than you possibly have before. And I think that's one of the beauties of fussy cutting is if we're in a world where we're cutting strips and triangles and squares, we're mass producing quilts. But if we stop to fussy cut, we can see potentials in fabric that might not last, taking too long to get there. I don't know what that means. So hopefully Rexel Sew LLC, you can possibly add a more comment to that. But so what I'm trying to say is that see your fabric for more than just the fabric that it is. And there's more potential there with things that you can see in the background of your fabric that will actually enhance your main project. So what exactly is fussy cutting? So fussy cutting is deliberately and intentionally isolating motifs in your fabric and using them as a focal point or as an enhancement to your main design. And so it gives your project a little something extra. And when I have seen fussy cutting used, it actually moves quilting into a category of art. And the ability to take a base material and convert it into something that makes it three-dimensional or that gives it motion more than just the actual print itself is actually art. And so I feel like it is a fantastic way to really just make new illusions with the elements in your fabric. And so you can use these to customize themes. So if you've got holiday prints, or if you have kids quilts or memory quilts, or if you want to do, it's very commonly used in like an I Spy quilt. And so you collect all these fabrics and you cut out the little pieces, and children love it because they can find the little elements that they're looking for. I Spy quilts are a fantastic use of this. Storybook quilts, if you want to have a collection of different characters and make a storybook quilt, that's a fantastic use of fussy cutting as well. And so what fabrics can be used for fussy cutting? And I am going to put a hot take on the table that any fabric that you have, with the exception of a solid, can be used for fussy cutting. And so I know that when we start thinking about fussy cutting, we start thinking about the big prints and that we can only fussy cut the big prints, or we can only fussy cut certain things. But I am going to show you examples of fabrics that are stripes and that are geometric and that are used to fussy cut and are actually able to create images and illusions that are more than they actually are. So when we look at fabrics that are suitable for fussy cutting, this is what most of us usually think about. And so I'm going to show you. So this is, the queen of fussy cuttable fabrics. And so this is a Tula Pink print. This is Tabby Road, guys. And so when we think of fussy cutting, I know most of us go straight to, we've got to have a big print, and we're going to do what's called a center motif. And so if I can draw it, we're going to cut out this cat. and we're going to put it on a project, right? Center motif is the most common way to fussy cut. And that's taking something big and that's isolating it and cutting it out specifically. And so this is, again, another tulip ink. And so people will take these dinosaurs and they're going to cut them out and they're going to fussy cut them. And it's because they want to isolate just this element. You fussy cut when you want to isolate an element. You can definitely use this in yardage. You can cut it into squares. We would die cut something like this every day of the week, and we would have dinosaur horns and dinosaur tails. But if you want to isolate just that element, you're going to do what's called a center motif. And so I have a couple projects where we have some center motifs. And so here's another tulip ink. And this is a bag that was made for me. And this fabric, the picture was a center motif. And so they took the two flamingos and they made this super cute little bag. Now, mind you, if they would have just lined it up on there, perhaps we would have had, part of a flamingo or not, or maybe one flamingo. But with design and with intentionality, those flamingos are centered on this bag. They are mirrored on both sides, and it's super stinking cute. Another center motif is this stitching bag. And so I made this and I hand stitched these hexagons here. Hold on, let me get it up so both cameras can see. And so what I did, this is one of the last collections from Cotton and Steel before they became Ruby Star. And so this is a Rashida Hale collection. And I isolated out little elements from a couple different prints. And so I put them on hexagons and then I top stitched them on top of this pocket in this bag. And so they're all center motif. So it's taking an element that I like and is centering it in whatever I am creating. So see, there's little elements like the houses, the animals, the people swimming. And so it's centering it on whatever I am cutting and whatever I am working on. Now, this is a quilt that Dawn in our shop made. And so Dawn is always making really cool, crazy projects for her kids. And she had a fussy cut pillow where she fussy cut out some Goldilocks elements. And so this one is, so here we have the stripes and the seams. This is not the fussy cut bit. But what she did to add that element of pop is she just fussy cut a zebra right in the middle, guys. Fussy cutting doesn't have to be extensive. It doesn't have to be the entire project. In this element, Dawn put a zebra here. I'm going to try and move it over so the Instagram folks can see it too. But so Dawn used this zebra in the middle to add a little bit of extra, right? That's all fussy cutting is it's a little bit of extra. Could she have put literally any other fabric there? Absolutely. But the fact that she put that in there says, I went the little extra mile on this project because I wanted to make it special for you. And so she did a center fussy cut there. Now, I know a lot of us like Sweetwater from Moda, and Sweetwater does a lot of prints that are like Tim Holtz. They're text prints, they're graphic prints. And so I took a class from Juicy Juice. He came from my guild here. He's going to be at our retreat in New Orleans. And he was teaching us the Moonstone pattern, which is this foundation paper piece pattern. And I took a Sweetwater print and I actually fussy cut out in a center motif fashion all 50 states. And I've integrated them into my Moonstone pattern. And so you can see this print itself was just one that they just had little like signs from all 50 states. And so I fussy cut them out using my acrylic templates. And so this Moonstone quilt will have all 50 states integrated into each block because it was a center fussy cut and it was put into this shape. Now, I did a fussy cut sew along on Instagram. If you guys want to follow any of these fussy cut sew alongs on Instagram, you will learn so much. The hashtag fussy cut sew along is where you'll find a ton of things. And every week for a year, we were given a different prompt and a different challenge. And one of the challenges we were given was to do a center motif fussy cut. And so I did it for the full year. And so I had fun going through all these. But the idea was we made these flowers. And each week there was a different prompt. And so this is the center motif. So the idea was find a motif that you like and isolate it out and cut the center of it. Here's a Dear Stella print. And so there was these cute little fairies that were center cut and center motifed. Here is one where the center motif, I actually rotated around the outside of the flower to keep the focus on this bird in the middle. So the same idea, you just isolate this element and instead of keeping them all in the same orientation, just rotating them as you go around. And now all of a sudden it adds a frame to the bird in the middle. And then this is the last one. This is fun. this was just on the prompt this week. We had to do a center motif, and I just decided to do something fun and bright. And so I had this little sun print. Now, mind you, you can see, like, you might get vexed when you're fussy cutting that it's got bits and pieces of all the suns around it, but I guarantee you when I held it up, not a single one of you saw that until I pointed it out to you. And so I just isolated out this sun fun face and put flowers around it. And this was fun because I tried to think, like, what order do I want to put these flowers in? And I was just like, oh, just put them in pairs and put it around the outside. So that is a fantastic, like, center motif example. Now, and I'm showing you kind of complex projects, but it doesn't have to be super complex. This is something, so Cheryl on our team is constantly making us seasonal coasters, and she fussy cuts out little seasonal themes, and she hands these out to us, and it just reminds us, like, what season we're in, and she stitches these together, and I mean, it's just little bits of joy that have been fussy cut, right? She could have taken this Halloween fabric and, you know, optimized it out and cut it out, but she went that extra step. And she added the ghosts to it and centered it around the theme. And it's just a little fun, right? It doesn't have to be super complex in order to have a fantastic center motif. Let's see here. Okay. So those are the center motifs, guys. Those are kind of the most common ways of fussy cutting when you look at fussy cutting. There is also what's called a section repeat. And so a section repeat is commonly used for something that is of a smaller design. And so what you're doing is you're taking something that has a graphic element to it, and you're going to take a piece of it. So it's almost like, here's my flamingo, but I just want to take a look at the flamingo legs or the flamingo feet. And then I'm going to find a certain number of them, 6, 8, 10, however. And I am going to take that fussy cut and I'm going to repeat it and make a new pattern that is different from my original pattern. So that is what a section repeat is. And so I have some examples of what a section repeat looks like. And so the idea is just take something that you really, really like in a pattern. And it does not have to be a big focus print. I'm going to show you some smaller pieces where you can get a section repeat and create a different illusion than what was there the first time. And so here, so this guy, when I hold this up, these are actually moths, they're moths. And so I really liked the moths, but when I isolated out the section, I liked how I was able to get them to connect all the way around. Right. And so this is something that I liked that section. I found it and I cut 6 of them. Then I made them into the hexagons and I repeated the section around a middle. Again, it creates a frame. Yeah, I probably could have aligned them all so they were all vertical or all upside down, but by changing the orientation of the section, you're almost taking a mirror and creating a kaleidoscope. And I know that's a common kind of quilting technique, but by taking that mirror and creating the kaleidoscope, you're creating a new pattern by repeating a section of fussy cutting. Here's another example of one where I actually, when I posted this, the comments I got were like, these were like eyelashes. And then here's another section that I repeated on the bottom, right? So by creating, and these were actually inside of a flower. These were kind of lines inside of a petal. But by taking them and arranging them this way, you've created something new with the section and with the repeat as it goes around. This guy has a center motif and a repeating section. And so it's got the center motif here of the otter, which is a fantastic Tula Pink All-Star print. And then I created the section, but instead of making them all go the same orientation to create a border, I joined them together in pairs. And by fussy cutting them that way, it makes the design kind of radiate out. It's definitely not just creating a round border around, and it's not just repeating it in the same orientation, but it creates this radiation and it gives it movement, and then it makes the otter just super stinking cute in the middle. Now, this one's one of my favorites. So I'm going to show this to you guys. And so this is a laurel birch fabric, and I have one here. I'll get it in a second. And so this one, I chose the same section. So these 2 here on the bottom and these 2 here on the top are the same. And then this section here on the left and the right is the same. And these are actually legs from a giraffe that were used in her fabrics. And so in that, thank you, Paula. Paula's got this for me. And so what it is, it's a matter of just taking a look at these fabrics, right? And it's easy to see, in this case, the elephants, right? But what happens if you section off just a piece of that elephant, right? What if you take a look at just this trunk here? What if you take just that trunk? Can you repeat that section and make something different. And in this case, right, these are just legs. But if I was to tell you they're legs, you have no idea because I've made them something different than what they originally intended. And by doing so, I've added, I'm supposed to hold it closer. I just got yelled at to hold it closer. All right. So see, so those are legs, but by doing it, I've given it kind of a really cool little border and a little pattern. And so it's just taking that element and almost even just looking at your fabric through a scope like this and like, what can if I take my template, I don't have any hexagon templates today, but as you slide your hexagon template over your fabric, what sort of designs can you isolate out and make as a section repeat? All right. The next type of fussy cutting is framing. And so we've seen a section repeat that acts as a frame, but this is how you can use those fabrics that are more geometric to actually create a frame around your fussy cut. And so I know when we think of fussy cutting, you would be like, why am I creating fussy cutting using stripes? Why am I fussy cutting using linear pieces? So that it feels wasteful to fussy cut using that. And so what I'm going to show you is a couple examples of where stripes and polka dots have been used to create frames around center images to give the design just a little bit of oomph. Let's see here. A lot of these are EPP, Amanda Hawk, because it is just easier to take them and show together the odd shapes. The center motif are mostly cut in squares, and those can be machine pieced. That is definitely a fantastic way to go as an entry into fussy cutting. But once you start getting into the advanced fussy cutting, that's really where it's creative use of shape and using EPP for finishing the designs. But you know, I'm going to show you guys a template and what to use to get the center motif. You can definitely do that, and that's straight piecing and that's machine piecing. Sylvia, it is a great use of scraps as well, and I will show you what happens when you do fussy cutting a lot. So let's get back to framing. And so here's an example of a fabric that I completed using stripes. And so this is a stripe pattern. And I actually cut it, and then you have to match all these edges. But this is a striped fabric that by just rotating it around the foundation paper piecing, it creates this fantastic hexagon shape. And you could literally just keep going with this, right? You don't have to stop here. And so this is just converting that striped fabric into something that's more than just a simple basic stripe. Here is an Alison Glass. I'm a big fan of Alison Glass as well. And so here's one of her fantastic line prints that is not just lines anymore. It actually radiates around the outside. And by just rotating those lines, you're creating different visual interest. This one doesn't look like a repeating stripe, but it actually is. It was a zigzag stripe print. That's what this actually was. And so it zigzagged down, and one was the light, one was the dark. And what I did is I isolated the sections and then created it into something more that created a frame. It was almost a flower radiating out of a flower as we created this block. Okay. Let me show you kind of some examples of what you could use to take normal fabrics that you wouldn't normally fussy cut and do something more with. So I've got a couple of these. So here's a very narrow kind of bright stripe that could be used to fussy cut. And I'm seeing some folks that, EPP, it's hard to do. I get it. EPP is very hard to do. But you can take this, and even if you cut it into squares or triangles and you rotate them, you can machine sew this, and you can make it something more than just a pinstripe fabric. And so you can definitely machine piece. That's part of what the thing is. It's easy for me to show you the EPP because that's what I have a ton of. But you can use these same concepts on squares and triangles and just isolate a piece, cut the repeat, and rotate it around a center. And all of a sudden, it's fussy cut into something bigger than it was originally. Here's another print that would be a fantastic candidate. As you're looking at the camera, it's pretty busy, right? It does kind of boggle your eyes, but you could definitely take this and cut this into triangles and radiate them around a center. And before you know it, you've got something that has kind of rings and that go around versus the straight line that this design is. And I know that, it might be hard for you at first to kind of see some of these fabrics for the potential that they have in them, but I just want to push the boundaries of what is comfort for everyone. Because I think when we talk about that center motif, that's easy. Everyone can see something they like and I'll cut it out and I can put it into a quilt and everything is great and fantastic, but there's other ways in which you can use these fabrics. Okay, EPP. English paper piecing, Kelly Parker. And so what English paper piecing is it's actually, it's cutting out fabric and then it is wrapping it around cardstock that is odd shapes. So this is not a shape that you would traditionally sew on a sewing machine, but you're wrapping the fabric around cardstock and then you're stitching it all together to make shapes that are not traditionally done on a sewing machine. And then you take these and you can applique them, you can stitch them together. So all of my blocks could be stitched together and make a giant quilt that I could then finish just like a traditional quilt. All right, so those are the easiest fussy cutting. I want to show you guys some of the more, like the most advanced fussy cutting that I've ever seen, and really kind of where kind of it becomes an art form and it becomes intentionality. And so it is pattern matching. And so this is where you take a certain motif and you cut it up into different sections and then you stitch it back together and you match all of your lines. So it doesn't look like you've actually cut it. And I know that sounds bonkers, but I'm going to show you some examples of where the same print has been pattern matched and then show you how it becomes different and how it becomes something more. So a pattern match block. So this here is a Tula Pink bird. Right. And so we've seen these before. This is a common bird for Tula Pink. And this is actually 7 hexagons that have been cut apart and stitched back together. And all of the pattern matches across all your pieces. Right. So it looks like the fabric was never actually cut. Here's another one. It is an art gallery fabric. And so again, it is 7 hexagons that have been taken apart, sewed back together, and all the patterns and the lines match. Now, why would you do this? This feels bonkers, right? Like, just use the fabric as it is. Well, what I have seen done with this is take this bird, and Tula Pink released it, and it came in 4 different colorways. And so take the different fabrics and rotate them around, and before you know it, you're in Jackson Pollock mode. You are Andy Warhol, right? If you've got a different color and your lines match up, all of a sudden the bird is in 4 different colors of fabric. And now you have something that's very psychedelic, very cool, and very awesome. And so I know oftentimes when collections are released, we see these prints that we love and they come in 4 or 5 different colorways. This is a way to really kind of give it an extra boost. If I did this in pink and the blue and the teal and the green and did it all the way around, now I have something very cool, very psychedelic, and very interesting. Okay, so that's kind of the world of fussy cutting. Now, if you are hooked and you don't know where to start and you want to learn more, here's where I started. And so this book, it's produced by Gnome Angel. Gnome Angel does a ridiculous amount of amazing fussy cutting. Most of her projects, if not all of them, are fussy cut. Most of them are machine pieced, but some of them are foundation paper pieced. Joyce is asking, did I do all these? Yes, Joyce, I did all of these, guys. The team has helped me with some of these other projects, but I did all the hexagon flowers. Okay, so this is Angie Wilson. She is Gnome Angel. This book gives you everything you need to know to even begin to break down the barrier of cutting my fabric in a non-traditional way and really isolating out elements that I like, appreciate, and want to do more with. I know that I showed you a lot of Tula Pink fabric. I don't want to cut Tula Pink fabric. I am one of those people that just want to look at it and love it. But I love that by doing this sew along on Instagram and by reading books like this, I'm cutting into that fabric that I feel is too valuable to just cut up and put into a quilt. And I'm doing something plus with it. I'm doing something more with it to add some value to fabric that I am emotionally connected to. All right, so as you look at tools to do fussy cutting, right? So this is not something that we can just rotary cut and do strips and make it happen. So the first thing is that your clear rulers are your friend. They have to be clear, because in order to be able to see the designs you want to isolate, in order to be able to see the sections, in order to see the frames, you have to have clear rulers. And so, you know, everyone has all these fancy schmancy cool clear rulers, right? As long as it's clear, you can center it over your design and cut it, but it doesn't have to be super clear. This morning I was cutting some shapes and I used just a regular grid ruler, right? This is a small version of just a regular quilting ruler. And I knew what size I wanted my blocks to be. So I put some tape on here just to help me see that I needed to center whatever I was cutting in this image here. And it helps you when you cut it and then you rotate it and you cut it again. And then you get your square finished block of everything that you want to fussy cut out. But clear is, it has to be clear in order for you to be able to see it. I mean, you can probably come up with other ways of using tape and paper and cardstock, but clear is most definitely helpful as you're doing this. Also, a light box is super valuable, especially for these ones where you're doing complex pattern matching. Being able to get the light to shine through so you can see where some of these edges are going to meet up. A light box is a fantastic tool to have. For a rotary cutter, whenever you're fussy cutting, I always recommend going down to your small blade, not the 45 millimeter one that we normally use to cut fabric, but going down to an even smaller blade for a couple of reasons. So first of all, that little blade is going to move slowly as you cut. So in case you made a mistake, it's not going to cut off a huge amount of fabric. Some of the shapes that you're going to want to fussy cut might be rounded, or perhaps they might have some odd shapes to them, like a hexagon. That smaller blade will help you have more control as you cut out your shape. And then also for safety. So if you're cutting out that hexagon, you're going to want to put a lot of pressure on it. You're cutting out that shape, you're going to want to put pressure on it. And if you're using a bigger blade, it is easier to jump on and accidentally cut yourself, which is a huge safety thing for me. The smaller blade will typically stay in place as you're cutting out your fabrics. Now, I wanted to show you guys. So I used the square ruler today, and I used a classic fabric, those little Sasquatches. And so and so I really liked these two in the print because they were waving. So I used the template and I isolated them out. And so these can now be used as center blocks. So to Amanda's question, you can use these and you can sew them into a quilt just like you normally would. There's no additional work required. There's no foundation paper piecing or English paper piecing. And now you've got two happy, chirpy, Sasquatches in your quilt, as opposed to, I think I threw it behind me, as opposed to, this all over print, which might be hard for you to cut into because you don't want to, cut off a Sasquatch and lose an arm or lose a leg. But if you fussy cut it out, now you have two pieces that are fun and can be used in a quilt block. Now, I also have, and I've mentioned this before, so I have this block here. I'll put it against my shirt so you guys can see it because it is clear. I have this coffin cut out. And I know whenever I talk about using a template that's a coffin, a lot of people go immediately to Halloween. But I want to show you guys, it doesn't have to be Halloween to use this shape. And I know they call it coffin. It's a coffin template. But actually, guys, it's the beginning of a Dresden. And so I used it on that same Sasquatch pattern, and I cut out my little guy, right? And I can cut out 10 of these little guys. And before you know it, I can straight piece them all the way around. And now I have a circle of my little guys. I have a round table of my little Sasquatches. And so I know that, when it comes to crazy templates like this, it can be easy to think that they're hard to cut, hard to sew. But I was able to just put them right on top, because it was clear I could see right through it, and cut right around the outside. And then I can get 10 of these. And before you know it, flower petals as well, Josie. These types of things you can make, and I could have a whole Sasquatch party as opposed to what, again, looks like an all over print that might not have much potential to it. But by just taking some controlled measures and pieces out of it, now you can do some really cool, fun things with it. All right. So what are some tips or tricks? Oh, sorry, the last one. I almost forgot the last one, and this is the best one, because as you're cutting out all these shapes and you're pushing down on, you're trying to cut all the corners, having a cutting mat that rotates, I found is invaluable, because you're here, and as you cut your shape, the last thing you want to do is have to lift anything up, because when you lift things up, things slide, things twist, things turn, and so it's easier to have this cutting mat that will actually rotate. If fussy cutting accuracy is important to you, I think this was like $15 on Amazon. You just find them, rotate them, and then that way everything stays in place. You don't have to lift and move anything, but this rotary mat is fantastic for fussy cutting. All right, so tips and tricks. Definitely use clear ruler, use tape, glue-based, pin. Make sure everything stays centered in your design. Make sure you're counting. This is a big one. When you're fussy cutting, just like we said in the first question, make sure you're including your seam allowances, because I have cut into some expensive fabric before and I've missed my seam allowances and I have cried. So make sure that you're including your seam allowances and that you're not getting too close to your dude when you're cutting it. So with this guy, right, this template has the seam allowance actually on the template. It is this white line that goes around the outside here. So I know, like, if I was to do this, I'm going to lose the poor dude's arm, right? Because he's outside my white boundary line for seam allowance. And so making sure that you're accounting for your seam allowance. It also would be probably equally bad if I lost his legs or his head. So just make sure that whatever you're wanting to fussy cut is within your seam allowance, and it'll be centered and perfect for you. One of the big things, and it's already popped up in the comments, is the amount of scraps. So you can fussy cut your scraps that you have, but I want to make sure that once you start going down this rabbit hole of fussy cutting and centering pieces and looking at your fabric differently, you need to be prepared to pull that fat quarter off your shelf and find something like this. And find something that has just random holes cut in it. And so I want to make sure that you guys are okay, that this is what your fabric is going to look like going forward. And so it's fun because I'll pull out a fat quarter of fabric that I want to use and I unroll it. And then all of a sudden I'm like, oh yeah, I fussy cut a hexagon out of that the other day. And so this is what's going to happen. And so I know for some of these fabrics, if you're a person that likes to use every single inch, you got to be okay with this. And you got to be creative with it. And knowing that, you know, by fussy cutting out something that has a high value, you might leave something behind that's not as cool. And that's absolutely okay. But this is, yeah, Diane, we're actually teaching you how to cut your own fabric when you want to fussy cut. So yeah, so just be prepared. And especially this, like this coffin shape over here, right? Just be prepared that this is what your fabric's going to look like when you start going down a lot of fussy cutting holes. But you can definitely take those and, you know, cut off the partial bits and pieces and use them for other projects and then keep the larger chunks. That's completely up to you. But make sure that you're prepared for that. All right. What we are going to do is, because I love fussy cutting so much, clearly, I have a lot of fussy cutting projects. Oh, I didn't even get to show you guys the best one. We're going to save that one for a minute. I do have one that I really cannot wait to show you guys. It's the one of the better ones. But what we're going to do is we are going to do a blog post on fussy cutting. And so we need posts from you guys. So if you go to Cotton Cuts Fabric in the Facebook group and post a project that you have fussy cut, we want to give people information about fussy cutting because it's one of those things, like I said, you either run to it or you run away from it. We want to get people comfortable in the middle and also continue to learn and expand our skills. That's part of what we're here for. So post this photo, send a photo in our Facebook group and take a look for that upcoming blog post. Now I'm going to end with this one. This is a quilt I've talked about and many shows. I keep alluding to it and I keep forgetting to bring it with me. And so today we're talking about fussy cutting and I feel like it's appropriate to talk about when we fussy cut. This is my biggest mistake quilt. So this is the quilt that I made for a book hop for Sheila. So she was making, she produced a book and I picked a pattern and I sewed it together and things were going along well until I put it together and I made this parachute. And I talked about this a lot last week. This is my biggest mistake. And so I brought it today because it is fussy cut and it is thematic and topical, but I wanted to show everyone what this quilt looks like. So here it is. This is my biggest mistake, but it is also my biggest success in fussy cutting. And so you can see those trapezoids, they all have those raccoon eyes in there. And so they radiate out from the center. They're all different colors. So I used 3 different colors of this, but I wanted to make sure that those eyes were isolated. And so the quilt actually, you know, comes together because of the fussy cut nature of it. And I was so proud of this and it's my biggest failure and I still love it. And so I wanted to show you guys today because it fits the theme and it talks about what we talked about last week. All right. I think that is it for us. If you guys have any questions about fussy cutting, I am always here to help. I love fussy cutting. It is something I've done a lot of and I can definitely help. And if you need courage cutting that fabric, put a post in the comments. There are definitely people here that'll help you cut into that special fabric and help give it a little extra oomph. Now to our questions. So find this video wherever you find us on Facebook, on YouTube, or on Instagram and answer this question. We will pick one lucky winner to get a $25 gift card to our shop. What is the most unexpected thing that you have fussy cut into a quilt? So tell me, what is the most unexpected thing that you have fussy cut into a quilt? For me, I think probably the most unexpected thing has to be those giraffe legs that I put into a border. That is unexpected. That is taking something that's not in its intended purpose and doing something different with it. But go ahead and share your answer and we will pick one lucky winner. Don't forget to join us next week. We are talking about Under the Sea and I'm going to go through all the color wheels and give you guys all the background and all the insider tips and tricks to make sure that you guys pick a colorway that you are going to love. That is it for me today, gang. Thanks so much for watching us. As always, have a fantastic weekend wherever you are, rain or sun or heat, and we will see you guys next week. Have a great day. Bye now. And cut. Thank you so much for watching our video. We have so much fun making these, and we hope that you were both delighted and inspired by what you just watched. This video was sponsored by Cotton Cuts. Cotton Cuts is your one stop for all the best fabric and thread memberships. Love fabric? We've got you covered. Love thread? We've got you covered. We get that no two quilters are cut from the same cloth, which is why our memberships are as unique as you. We also have the largest block of the month in the world. Over 4,000 detectives solve our puzzle mystery quilts every year, and you can join them. Simply go to cottoncuts.com to learn more about all the awesome and fun things that we're doing. And don't forget to hit like and subscribe to make sure you get all of our new fresh content every time it comes out. Thank you so much. Happy sewing enthusiasts, and we will see you soon. Bye now.